So if you have questions about what do I say on the phone, if you have questions about how do I handle these objections, we can totally dive into those. By the way, put your questions in the chat. The sooner you get them in the chat, the faster we can answer them, because I do have a little bit of material. The topic for this month is going to be how to upsell a patient into a higher level of treatment, right? So maybe you have a patient that's been coming in for regular cleanings and they're missing teeth, and you want to upgrade that patient into implants, right? Or maybe a patient's coming in for teeth whitening and you want to present an orthodontic solution to them, right? How do you do that? Because if you just go and say, hey, we can do Invisalign or we can do braces, the patient might say, that's way more money than I was planning on spending. Just do my teeth whitening, right? But I'm going to walk you through a way to have that conversation so that you can upgrade patients to that. So if a patient is, maybe just thinking, hey, I just need some extractions, we can show them how they can go to a full arch on the upper or the bottom. So we're going to give you steps to do that today. Let me know one in the chat or yes in the chat if you think that would be useful in your practice. And if you think it would not be, put a 2 and follow that up with your specific question so we can dive into that.
One thing to know here as well, just most of the attendees are full arch right now, and wanted to emphasize on the shopping objection over the phone, if we could focus on that. And also, again, how to understand why they're even calling to begin with and the buying motive. A lot of times, like, that's missed. So if we could focus on that too, and again, how to increase our chance of them showing up. More and more people are saying like, hey, I've been going to this place XYZ, got quoted. How much do you guys charge? And if they charge a higher price, typically that's like a dead end. So if we can address that, so that'd be great. You're muted.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going for the tool that we use for this, of course, is the gold standard call checklist. How to handle those. How much do you charge for implants questions, or how much do you charge per arch questions on the phone? But also how to have a quality conversation that's strong enough that stops the patient from calling the 5 other practices in town to try to price everyone out. So let me get that up here and we can also take a look. While I'm grabbing that, everyone, let me know in the chat, one, if that would be useful. You want to look at things to say on the phone. Put a 2 if you have a different question that's related to conversion and sales at your practice. Okay, we got a 1. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, I've got this here now. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Let me know in the chat, just drop a 1 and we will dive in. Let's make this a little bit bigger. All right, perfect. Lots of 1s here. Okay, so this is the gold standard call checklist. This is the rubric by which I grade phone calls, and this will go through a process that can help you diffuse the pricing questions and increase show rate on your full arch patients. So first thing first, I know you're all eagerly wondering, okay, how do I handle that pricing question? I'm going to give you exact verbiage in just a moment here, but I want you to understand that that verbiage sits on top of a foundation, right? So the foundation is following this process. If you just try to use different little scripts here and there without having a standard process, you're still just rolling dice. You're throwing darts in the dark. Maybe you hit the dartboard, maybe you completely miss. So just understand that the solution is having a strong process, having a strong foundation. That's what the call checklist gives you. And then I'm going to give you the scripting for exactly what to say when the patient says, well, how much do you charge for an implant? We'll talk about that too. That said, the first thing we are trying to do on the phone is prove to the patient that we are not like other practices. I'll say that again. The first 30 seconds of the call is all about showing the patient that we are different. Why does that matter so much? Because it's 2025. Patients have been calling, and the chances that you are the first office they've called are actually pretty low, right? They've been to other practices, they've called other practices, they've been looking on ChatGPT and Google for pricing, right? They're comparing you to a lot of stuff. So if you don't sound different in the first 30 seconds, they're automatically going to categorize you as just like everybody else. If you are put in the just like everyone else box, they will price you just like everybody else, right? If you are buying commodities, all things being equal, you're going to get the cheapest one. If you need to buy a car and there's 3 dealerships who have the same make and same model of the car and it's even in the same color, you're going to go with the cheapest one. You don't care which dealership it is. You don't care if they have a cleaner showroom or if one of the guys has a kid that went to high school with yours. That doesn't matter. If it's all the same product, you look for the cheapest. Don't be the same product to your patient. So how do we do this? First thing we do is we tell the patient non-verbally that we have time for them, right? This is the first step to good customer service. So when you greet the patient, you greet them slowly and smiling. Say that again, slowly and smiling. It's really important because a lot of times you're running around, you're busy, and maybe it's not you, maybe it's your front desk, but they've got a million things going on. They just had a patient that was calling them angry about some billing thing. They're checking out 2 other patients. Someone just walked in to the waiting room and then the phone rings and they go, thank you for calling ABC Dental. My name is Josh. How can I help you today? Right? And they rip through that introduction. What does that communicate? That communicates I'm busy and I'm too busy for you. If you do that, especially with a full arch patient where they're prepared to spend 20 or 30 or 40 or maybe $50,000, they're going to say next, right? If you're spending tens of thousands of dollars, do you want to be treated as level of customer service that's like worse than an insurance company? No. You want a high level of customer service when you're spending that much money, and your patients want that high level too. So if you are servicing patients, especially for large comprehensive cases, for full arch, for veneers, for whatever, make sure that your team is prepared to greet the patient slowly and smiling to show them, I have time to give you full customer service. Thank you for calling ABC Dental. My name is Joshua. How can I help you smile today? That's what you're looking for. If they're ripping through it fast, you're already losing patients. So start with that as the foundation. Next, you're going to want to ask the patient's name within the first 15 seconds. This is really important because a lot of people nowadays are not introducing themselves. They'll just go, oh, how much do you charge for an implant? They like rip straight into the question. They rip right into the conversation. You don't want to do that. You want to get their name, right? So 2 ways to do that is just you can ask, hey, who do I have the pleasure of speaking with? Or my favorite way is I go, oh, there was a little static on the line. I missed your name. Can you say that again? Right? Get the name from your patient. You want to use it because everyone's favorite word in their language is their name, right? If your name is Paul and you're walking across the street and some guy 2 blocks over yells, Paul, you're probably going to turn and look, right? Just imagine if it's your name. If your name's Simon, Simon, right? If your name's Artie, Artie. If your name's Joshua, I heard someone the other day yell Joshua, and I was like, huh? Are you talking to me? They're talking to someone else named Joshua. But it doesn't matter. Everyone's name they respond to. You want to have their name so you can use it throughout this phone call. Again, this sets you apart. This creates a higher level of emotional connection with your patient. And this is huge. They're shopping based on how much service am I getting, right? They know they're going to spend a lot of money. They know they're going to get a surgeon if they're getting full arches, if they're getting implants. But they want to know, am I getting the customer service that goes with it? Now, it's important also to ask the patient's needs within the first 30 seconds. This is key because sometimes patients just go off on tangents and it's not clear what they want or what they're looking for. So you always want to take back the control. If your patient's saying stuff, you're like, I'm not really sure what's going on here. Just say, hey, just so I can best help you, what is it that you're looking for today? You just go straight to the chase. Make sure you're doing that within the first 15 seconds. It should be nice, slow greeting. If the patient doesn't introduce, get the patient's name, and then immediately we're going into what does this patient need. That's the foundation. Does anyone have any questions about this before we go into this exact scripting? Okay, if the patient now says, how much do you charge for implants? What do you do? Does anyone have any questions before we get into that? I see, looks like Rebecca says, are you able to email us a copy of this checklist? Yes, absolutely. If you send me your email address, I can send this checklist directly to you. Again, any questions before we move on to the scripting itself? Someone put a number 2 in the chat. I'm assuming that's because you have a question that you're typing up, maybe? No questions. Okay, perfect. So let's move on, right? So assuming you've set the foundation, right? Which if you haven't, you're really just rolling the dice on if this scripting will actually work. But if the patient at this point says, how much do you charge for implants? Most offices will give some version of, oh, well, we don't really tell the price on the phone, or we would need you to come in for the consult in order to find out, or, well, I don't know quite yet because I don't know enough about your situation. Notice how all this is defensive. Like, no, I can't tell you that right now. I need you to do something else. All of it's really, really defensive language. I'm highlighting this because, again, you remember the foundation here of getting full arch patients to show up to your practice with money is by standing out. You're like everybody else. They will treat you like everyone else. They will price shop you to death. Don't do it. Right? So if most practices get defensive around price questions, we want to do the opposite and embrace price questions, right? And I mean, you want your team to sound like getting excited. You want them to be cheerful, happy, like really like, oh, thank you so much for asking me this price question, right? Now, the words you're going to say are, I would love to help you find out. And you're going to say it in an excited, enthusiastic tone. I would love to help you find out, right? Now, notice what we're not saying. We're not giving a price. We're not saying you have to come in for a consult. We're not telling them, oh no, I need these other things first. We're not defensive in any way. We're completely accepting this question. We're bringing it in. Yeah, I would love to help you find that out. Really, really embracing that question. When you do that, the patient's going to go, huh? Because they have not heard that before on the phone. What they're hearing is, well, I can't tell you the price on the phone. They're expecting that, and they're already prepared with that. Well, give me a ballpark, or tell me what you charged another patient. They're waiting for that. So when you say, I would love to help you find out, you're going to throw them off key. They go, whoa, this is different. I'm not expecting this, right? This lets you stay in control of the car. So again, if you're writing this down, it's I would love to help you find out. Now, you might be thinking right now, okay, that's great, Joshua. That all sounds well and good, but what do I say next? Right? What do I say next? I just told the patient, hey, I'd love to help them find out how much I charge for implants. What do I do now? You go right back into your phone call and you start asking questions, good quality questions about the patient's situation. Because while we would love to help the patient find out, at the same time, we're not giving away prices on the phone. Why? Because that's what everyone else does when they're pressured. You're not going to give away the price on the phone, but you're also not going to reject the patient's question. Tell them, I would love to help you find out. And then you are immediately going through your question checklist, whatever you have. If you don't have good questions to be asking on the phone, let me know. I also have those. I can send you a list. But the checklist, the standard here is we need to ask at least 3 good questions, right? What makes you think you need implants? How long have you been missing those teeth? Are you in any pain, right? Those are some basic questions, but you can ask a myriad of different ones. We want to start gaining control of the conversation and find out, right? So if they tell us, okay, it's been 2 years since I've been missing these teeth, okay, and I'm just wondering, what's the reason you're looking to do something about this now, right? If they tell you, oh, okay, I went to this other practice and they told me I need implants, I would ask, okay, what stopped you from getting implants there? That's valuable information for the call, right? If they're in pain, ask them scale of 1 to 10, right? We want to ask questions and ask follow-up questions to build the situation. Because here's the thing. When the patient comes in your office, you look inside their mouth and you go, okay, I see what's going on. The patient is not thinking on a daily basis exactly what's happening in their mouth. And a lot of times, if they need a lot of comprehensive, they need a lot of restorative work, they're actively trying to avoid it and push it out of their mind. So they are not comprehending things like it's been happening for a long time. Here's how it's impacting my life. Here's all the changes I've made. Here's the embarrassment I've gone through. They're trying to push that away. They're trying to forget about the time where their 6-year-old nephew said, your teeth look funny, uncle. They're trying to forget about those things. So if you don't bring these things to the forefront of the conversation, they will continue to try to forget about them, which is why they're not justifying the price, right? They've gotten rid of the emotional pain. So they're saying, I don't really want to spend the money, right? People only spend big money when they have big emotion, right? That's why weddings are so expensive, because the level of emotion that's involved in a wedding is super high. If weddings were boring, and I don't mean just for the participants, if weddings were also boring for the people getting married, I guarantee you they'd be a lot cheaper, right? But weddings are expensive because the emotion involved is high. In order to justify a high price for what you do, you need the patient to be emotionally involved. Does that make sense to everyone? Drop a yes in the chat if that makes sense, because this is really, really key. It's why your patients are not showing up, is when you do this wrong. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So you want to make sure that your patients are emotionally involved. So once you have the situation, then we want to take it a step further and ask the personal impact questions. Those are questions like, does this affect your ability to sleep at night, right? Have you had to change your diet? Has anyone said anything about the way your teeth look, right? Or do you sometimes hide your smile? There's some audio there. Do you hide your smile? Like, are you embarrassed? Do you sometimes cover your mouth? Are you smiling but without moving your lips? Right? You need to find out, is your patient doing these things? Because this impacts how the patient feels. It impacts their emotional state throughout their life, right? When you get the personal impact questions, that's when everything changes. They're emotionally involved in the case. So if you don't get them emotionally involved, you're never, ever going to be able to sell it. Right? So you have to make sure that you don't just ask the situation questions, but you're also asking these personal impact questions. And this by far is the most skipped section on all the phone calls I listen to. So you want to make sure your team is going the extra mile to get the emotional investment. Because again, if you don't go there, if you don't raise the emotion, if the patient doesn't feel like it, they're not going to feel like spending the money. So you cannot treat this patient like someone who needs a filling, like someone who's trying to book a cleaning, or like someone who is just there to price shop, because they're actually not there to price shop. The only reason patients are price shopping is because they're looking for a change, right? Nobody goes price shopping for products they're not interested in. You wouldn't go calling around for oil changes if your car didn't need an oil change, right? You wouldn't go talking to realtors if you weren't looking to buy a house. And I guarantee you, there's no such thing as a price shopper. No patient wants to spend their time calling around to different dental offices if they're not actually interested in getting implants. So it's really, really key that you're actually able to ask these personal questions. And those are tough, right? Your team will not inherently want to ask these. They're going to see this and they're going to avoid it. That's why listening to your call recordings is important to find out, is your team avoiding these conversations, right? So if they are, you need to make sure you're pushing them. I need emotion from my patients. If you don't get that emotional impact, it's all over, right? So we go from telling the patient, I would love to help you find out, to then raising the emotional level, then we can book without telling them the price. And that's the key, right? You tell them, I'd love to help you find out so they don't get resistance. You ask your questions to build the emotional case, and then you sell the consult. Does that make sense to everyone? Put a 1 or a yes in the chat if that does. Put a 2 if not. Perfect. Okay. So to follow up here, I recommend a few other things, right? First, tell the patient why they've called the right place. This is really easy to do. Hey, you've called the right place. My doctor, Dr. John, is amazing at placing implants, amazing at setting arches. You're in the right place. Simple, easy, just tell them. Really important here, share a story about another patient that you recently helped, right? This is why people trust reviews. When you're looking for a restaurant, you go on Google and you look at the reviews and you see, okay, do they have 4.8 stars or do they have 3.2 stars, right? That makes a difference in your decision to go there, right? This is why when people are shopping online, they're looking for, do I have testimonials? Give them a testimonial on the phone. Again, this sets you apart from other practices. This will help the patient show up. So that's what you do in discovery. So now we're moving this patient forward to actually offering the appointment, right? So when we get to this section, we're going to tell the patient, hey, I'm worried about you. And these are really key words, worried or concerned. Again, this is another item that your front desk will avoid because it's emotionally loaded. That's fine. This is an emotionally loaded conversation. And if it's not, that patient will never buy. I'll say that again. If your phone calls, if your consults with patients are not emotionally loaded, they're never going to spend $40,000 on a case. So if your team's like, this is a little bit uncomfortable to say, good, right? Not because we want your front desk to be uncomfortable. They will get used and adjusted to it, but because your patient should feel discomfort about their situation. If they don't, they will not buy. So we're going to tell the patient, hey, I am worried or I am concerned. One of those two words, worried or concerned, right? And we're telling them we're worried and concerned because of the stuff they told us. Hey, I am worried about your situation because you said it's been 2 years that you've been missing this teeth and you're now chewing on the other side of your mouth. A lot could have shifted, right? You're telling them, I am concerned. I'm worried. Hey, I'm worried about what you're telling me because you said that you're missing 5 teeth and you're in a lot of discomfort and it's keeping you up at night. Where did I get that information? I got that from the questions that I asked the patient earlier in the call, right? So if you don't ask good questions, you can't tell them that you're worried. You can't tell them that you're concerned. But you absolutely need to ask those questions and then tell the patient you're worried. That's why we're booking, right? Tell them how much the doctor can help them, right? This is another place to say, hey, I'm really worried about you, but you're in the right place. Dr. John is fantastic. He's going to take amazing care of you. He's going to find out exactly what's going on for you. Now here, don't bring up insurance. Don't discuss the price before this point. If, and this is a small if, right? This is like 15, 20% tops of your phone calls. If you follow the process, right? If you follow this process, every time the patient asks you, what is the price? Only 15% of the time will they require the price before booking. If you follow the process, then and only then can you give them the price, right? So if you've distinguished yourself as different from other practices, then you can give the price because now they're not comparing you as a commodity, they're comparing you as a unique entity. But I prefer not to give the price at all, right? So from here, we're then going to suggest the appointment. Like, hey, I'm really worried about your situation. Dr. John is amazing. I know we can help you. He helped another patient just like you last week. Let's book a time to bring you in to find out exactly what's going on. If you do that, on top of building the emotional case as you should have in the discovery section, that patient will say yes to booking the appointment. Now, if you fail to do this, right, if the patient calls, you skip all this, you say, my doctor's amazing, do you want to book a time, like most practices do? The patient's going to go, no, I want you to tell me the price of implants, right? That's why it's important, print this out. I know some of you have asked for this checklist. I'm going to send it to you. Print this out. Use this to grade calls. When you're listening to call recordings, and by the way, I know most of you are not listening to call recordings. You absolutely should. It's costing you tens of thousands of dollars in production every single month not to listen to call recordings. So spend the 30 minutes and listen to them, right? But when you're listening to call recordings, you're going to take this checklist and go check, 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 check. My team did it, or skip, 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 X, X, X. My team didn't do that. And then you train them. That's what this checklist is for, right? So the patient then says, okay, yep, I'm good for the appointment. Don't stop there. You're going to take their information, of course, but you don't just take their personal details and then say, oh, okay, we'll see you then, right? We want to make sure that that time shows up. You probably spent, and this is another thing to note, a good phone call for a full arch case is going to take anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. Say that again. A good phone call to book a good implant case, a good consult, is going to take between 10 and 15 minutes. And that's why if your team is trying to rush the phone call, they're going to fail. If your team is rushing these phone calls, you're going to have no-shows. You're going to have patients showing up not serious. You're going to have patients price shopping you because you're not giving it the respect that the money deserves. They're spending 40 grand. They need to be treated like a high ticket patient because they're different than just your walk-in and your cleaning, right? So make sure you're spending the time to do this. If you're spending the time, then it's worth the little extra time to confirm the appointment, right? So the first thing you're gonna do after you've confirmed their details is you're gonna find 3 different ways to repeat the appointment time. So if they say, I want to come in on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, then you might just respond, okay, Tuesday at 2 o'clock, perfect, let me write you down for that, right? Then when you're doing the rest of this, you can mention, okay, perfect, I'm gonna let Dr. John know that you're coming in at Tuesday at 2 o'clock, and we're gonna review the notes from this call so that he's ready for you, right? I'm really excited to see you when you come in for your appointment on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, right? When you're asking about the conflicts, okay, so Tuesday at 2 o'clock is actually the day after Labor Day. You don't have any crazy thing at work that you need to get back to, do you? Right? So we're gonna say Tuesday at 2 o'clock until they're annoyed, right? And again, your front office will already object to this. Well, if I say this too much, well, they might say something. They might tell me like, why do you keep repeating the appointment time? Exactly. Because if your patient says, hey, you repeated the appointment time 5 different times, what do they know? They remembered the appointment time. The biggest thing we want to combat is patients not paying attention, right? So you're going to want to repeat that appointment time as many times as possible because the ones that get a little bit annoyed, they're going to remember their appointment. And the ones that don't, they miss the first 2 times that you reminded them anyways. All right, so always, always, always repeat the appointment time 3 different ways. For bonus, get 4, get 5, as many as possible. Now, this is really key here. We're asking about conflicts in advance. This is something that almost nobody does. This will save you a lot of cancellations and a lot of no-shows. Absolutely easy to do. Do not waste your phone call by skipping it. All you have to do is you ask the patient, hey, on this time and on this date, what things do you have going on? What things could get in the way? So if the patient says, oh, okay, let's do Wednesday at 9 a.m. Okay, Wednesday at 9 a.m. You don't have to take the kids to school, do you? Right? Like there's, a lot of traffic on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Are you sure you want that time? Right? We're going to give them the obstacles before they come up, right? We're going to bring these things up. I know we're getting back into the school season, but a few months ago, it was really, really important, and I advised all my clients to do this, was to ask about vacations. What vacations are coming up? Because sometimes patients will just book a time and then they'll be like, oh, dang it, I'm going on a cruise. You absolutely have to ask your patients about conflicts. And here's why. You might think, why don't they know their schedule, right? Your patient can't plan ahead. And I have evidence for it. If your patient, unless they're on like some car crash or whatnot, but if they just failed to take care of their teeth, and that's why they need implants, your patient has no ability to plan for the future. Because if they did, they would be brushing and flossing and doing the preventative care that they needed. So again, unless you have a patient who was like in a car crash yesterday, and even then do this, but your patient is showing you evidence that they do not have ability to plan for the future, which is why you absolutely need to ask about the conflicts in advance. If you don't do this, you're basically asking someone who can't plan for the future to please, please, please show up. I don't like hope, especially if I just spent 15 minutes investing in this patient's emotions, right? So ask them about the conflicts, give them examples of things that could get in the way, try to find that out so that they can bring up objections before you get off the phone call. And you'll be surprised. You'll have patients go like, oh yeah, I forgot. I have the kids this week. I got to take them to school. I can't come then. Perfect, right? Or if they say, oh, you know what? Actually, there's that big monthly work meeting at the start of the month. I actually can't come. Okay, good. Reschedule before they even get off the phone call, right? Way, 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 way better than the patient canceling or no showing. Okay, last thing is we're gonna let the patient know, hey, I'm telling the doctor about your appointment and about what you told me, right? This is again adding value to the appointment because we spent time earlier in the call highlighting the doctor's abilities. So you're also going to want to tell the patient that you're, now informing them about this, right? It's just like if you're meeting with someone important, you're going to take the time to show up, right? Like if you won some sweepstakes and you were going to get to have lunch with your favorite singer or someone that you very much respect, you're going to make sure you show up to that because that person is important. They're important to you. So we're letting the patient know this person that I just told you is important. I'm going to inform him about your situation. He's going to prepare time on his calendar, and we're going to make sure that we're ready for you. Again, this is a higher level of service than just someone who's coming in for a crown. This is someone who's going to spend a lot of money. You need to treat them like someone who's going to spend a lot of money, right? Lastly, end the call, let them know, hey, I'm excited to meet you in person, right? If you did this call well, the patient will like you, right? By the way, side note, a really good way to know if the patient likes you is if they ask for your name at the end of the phone call, right? Like if they're like, oh, and what was your name again? Right? That patient had a good phone call. Or they had a really bad one, right? But if it was a really bad phone call, you're going to know well in advance of that, right? So let them know, hey, I'm really excited to meet you in person. Because again, if you spent the time to find out what they need and you told them you're worried, and you told them all the amazing things your doctor can do, they're going to want to meet you. So just let them know. And that's where you can end the call. It's also where you can get your third repetition of the meeting time. Okay, so that is the gold standard call checklist. Again, this is the foundation that allows you to overcome those price questions. Ultimately, the way you overcome the price question is not through the exact words, I would love to help you find out, although those are important. The way you overcome the pricing question is by distinguishing yourself from the rest of the offices the patient is called. And we're doing this by showing the patient, hey, if you're considering spending $30 or $40 or $50,000 with us, we will treat you like a patient who's spending $40 or $50,000. We're not just going to say, hey, you want a cleaning book of time? We're going to take our time with you because you're important to us. We should be important to you too. So that's how you overcome that price question. Does anyone have any questions about that? Oh, I see we already have a question in the chat here. Let's read it. Okay, so they're looking for a dentist who specializes and are seasoned. How long have they been in practice? How do we give them reassurance that they found the right place? I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. Let me read it again. They're also looking for a dentist who specializes and are seasoned, quote unquote, and how long they've been practicing. How do we give them reassurance that they have found the right place? Can you phrase the question in a different way? So you absolutely should be telling the patient about how credentialed your team is, right? So like let them know, hey, Dr. John, here's where he went to school. Here's all the things he's been doing. He's been practicing dentistry for the past 15 years. He's amazing, right? Tell them all these things because the patients do care about that. They do care that their dentist is amazing, right? You're getting on an airplane and the pilot gets on and says, hey, my co-pilot, this is his first flight and I thought I'd let him have fun, so he's going to fly us the whole way, right? You'd be nervous, right? Instead, when the pilot gets on, he says, okay, this is me, this is my co-pilot, we've been doing this for 10 years, whatever, right? You want a pilot who's been doing it for a long time, who's skilled, who's trained, right? If you know your pilot flew jets in the military, it probably makes you sit back in your seat a little bit better. But I think I can't see your full name, but it starts like Smile something. But your question, can you rephrase your question? Because I'm not sure I fully got it. Does anyone else have questions, by the way, about how to handle these pricing questions on the phone, how to book these patients, how to make sure that they show up?
Sorry, Josh. I think what they're asking for is like, let's say, someone that has exceptional credentials and they have good experience. How do you explain that to the patient over the phone? And how do you build up the conversation to that point so that the patient realizes like, hey, they're not just going to like a corporate office with a newly grad dentist, but they're going to um, a place that the doctor is very experienced for the procedure they're looking for. And in some cases, some of the attendees, like the doctor is a mentor to other doctors.
Yes.
So how would you build that up and yeah, like tell them you found the right place by mentioning that directly? And first of all, should that like does that even matter to the patient to begin with? Is that in their mind or should that be built into their mind?
Yeah, great question. So this one's actually pretty simple. Just tell them, right? If your surgeon has been mentoring other dentists about how to do this, then tell the patient, hey, this is not just your run-of-the-mill surgeon. This one has been mentoring others. My doctor, Dr. John, he's a mentor, right? So if you have those things, tell the patient. If you've been practicing for 20 years, tell them we've been practicing for 20 years. Because the thing is, the patient's never gonna really ask, but they want to know, right? So again, they might not ask, but they do want to know. And a lot of other practices are not telling the patient this, right? So they're not letting the patient know. So when you do, you stand out. Just because you have it on the website and you have that About Us section and you have the dentist credentials, your patient did not make it that far, right? They went to Google, they found you, or they clicked the link, they showed up, right? But they're not reading those bios. I know we wish they would read the bios, but those bios really should be for your front desk to get super familiar with your dentist and with their credentials. So again, the answer here is pretty simple. All you do is you literally just tell the patient, hey, you've called the right place, and here's why. Because my doctor's been practicing for 20 years. He's a specialist, he's an oral surgeon, and he's been mentoring other dentists. So he's fantastic. You're in great hands. So you're just gonna let them know straight up. Okay, we have another question here. How would you notify the patient of any fees associated with their visit? Where do you work that in on the call checklist? So if your consult, you have a consult fee, then you would tell that when you're booking the appointment, right? But again, my question here would be, if you have a patient, right, who's potentially going to spend 30 or 40 or $50,000 with your practice, why on God's green earth are you going to risk potentially that case for a $50 or $100 or $150 consult fee? Right. If you're
The answer, I always bring that up. The answer that I typically get is because we want to make sure the patient's qualified. So the concept of qualified patient is really the motivation of charging for a consult. In my opinion, that has nothing to do with qualifying a patient, but that's how some people see, especially specialty offices. They say, well, I gotta protect our time.
yeah.
What
So
questions can you ask to evaluate the patient's seriousness on this and financial capability instead of having that $150 to act for that,
yeah, so first thing, that $150 consult fee does absolutely nothing for qualifying the patient. It does not help. It will reduce your conversion. Now, the big question all the time is, I don't want to waste my time on patients who can't afford to pay. Here's the way you look at your math. You pull up your calendar, you look at the next 2 or 3 weeks. If there is space in the calendar, take more patients. So again, if in the next 2-week time frame, you have more blocks to book consults for full arches, book them, because your overall conversion rate will justify the time spent. So again, the way you look at this is, do you have time?
what questions, like, let's say you still want to like stick to that flow, but what questions would you ask to verify that the seriousness of the patient financially and their intent level of them coming in and doing the procedure? What would matter to you over the phone?
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying the calendar thing, because if you have time, you should do absolutely nothing to qualify your patients financially. So I'll say that again.
But
If you
let's
have
say
a
time is an issue.
So it's an issue because it's an emotional issue, not because it's a business issue, right? You're like, ah, man, I had this patient, I spent all this time, and he didn't have any money, right? But on average, if you don't have enough times booked, you could just make up that money by having more consults, right? So you make it up by doing more work. Now, the equation changes when your calendar is full. So if you're full for 2 or 3 weeks out, then and only then do you start qualifying, right? Because you want to maximize your volume first. Because by the way you get better at this is through practice, right? If your team's not booking very well, they get better through practice. If you're not presenting consults very well, you get better through practice. So if you have patients that don't have any money, that's fine, practice on them. But again, out of 10 patients, right, if 5 of them don't have any money and 5 of them do, you're not going to find out until the time comes time to run their credit card, right? You can try to find out, but anytime you add a consult fee, start asking about how much money you do have on the phone, asking them about credit on the phone, that's going to reduce your booking rate. So if you have slots to fill the slots, you'll eventually find the 5 with money. This only comes into play when your calendar is full. So for those of you who are already doing a lot of full arch cases and your calendar is full, then and only then would I add the consult fee. Would I inform the patient of the price range that they're looking at? Because then you want to maximize the time that you have. Does that make sense to everyone? Put a 1 or a yes in the chat. Put a 2 if you have a follow-up question. I got a question here. When you went over if the patient asked about the price, I would love to help you find out. And then you go into the questions. What's your advice on what to say when the patient then goes back to, okay, now what is the price? Okay, so if the patient goes back to, okay, now what is the price? It's either one of 2 things. Either number 1, you dropped the ball on this checklist and you lost control of the call, in which case the solution is just practice the checklist. Or number 2, what happened is you got that 15 or 20% where you built the emotional case and you said, let's get the appointment, and they said, what's the price? So in that case, in case number 2, where you have completed the checklist, you know, I asked my 3 questions about their situation, I got personal impact questions, I told them about my dentist, I shared another story, I told them I was concerned, I gave them the credentials of my doctor, right? And then they still say, but what is the price? Okay, tell them. That's fine. But that's going to happen a small percentage of the time because the patient really doesn't care about the price. They care about if you're going to take care of them, right? Again, the other thing is you tell the patient, hey, I'd love to help you find out. You ask them what makes you think you need implants. And then you're kind of like on the phone waiting around for something to happen, right? This happens a lot, but it's because you're not following process, right? And I don't mean you, it might be your team. But if you're getting hit with that question up here, what it means is you're not following the system to actually run that call. So if the question's up here, practice is the solution. If the question comes right here when you're booking the appointment, then you can tell them the price. But either way, you always want to complete this discovery and this concern section of the call. Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe, 1, 2, 1. Okay, perfect. So I want to circle back to the qualifying patients thing, because this is an emotionally loaded topic. Again, I mentioned before, it's not business and it's not logic. This is an emotional issue because providers, teams, office managers, front desks don't like spending time on broke patients. I don't want to talk to someone who doesn't have any money, right? The problem with that mindset is you're commodifying your patients, and the ones who do have money will smell it a mile away, right? So again, if you have time on your calendar, you want to book as many full arch consults as you can get, because then your conversion rate applies against all of them. So let's do some math. If you convert your full arch cases at 40% of your consults and you have 10 new slots, would you rather try to book a few of them with qualified patients, or would you rather book all of them, right? Because if you book 4 of those slots, and let's say because they're qualified, you were able to close at 75%, you now have 3 full arch cases. You book 10 of those slots, and because you just got everyone, you closed at 40%, you now have 4 full arch cases. So the question to ask yourself is 6 hours worth that extra money? In this case, it is, right? Because the value, the ticket size of the treatment is high enough. Now, do you do this for crowns and fillings and general dentistry? Absolutely not, right? But the math changes when you're looking at the ticket size of these cases. So you, again, absolutely do not qualify your patients financially unless your calendar is full. I would not charge them a consult fee. I would not ask them any of this on the phone. In fact, one of my favorite things to tell full arch patients is, hey, because I'm so worried about your situation, because it's so serious, I'm going to waive the consult fee just for you so that you can meet with Dr. John and he can help you. Again, this is the difference between treating them like everyone else and giving them premium concierge service. They deserve premium service because they're going to spend $30 or $40 or $50,000. So treat them differently. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, a lot of times the consult is given away for free, and that's
I hate that.
an issue where there's no build, you don't really build value on the free consult, which is like an hour and a half of a handful of people's time. Um, that's more of an issue than charging or doing it for free. Like I think over the phone, the value of the consults needs to be built up, and the easiest way to do that is what you just said. I believe Daniela has a question. She raised her hand. You can chat, Daniela, in the Zoom chat.
Yes, put it in the chat there. I couldn't agree more, Artie. Free consult is like the worst thing you can hear on the phone. Because if it's free, if you give it to everyone, again, you're not special, right? Like if they're giving it to everybody, then there's no exclusivity, right? When you go and sit in first class on the airplane and they bring the champagne or they bring the coffee only to first class, right? Even the people in business class are like, hey, they got something that I didn't, right? How much does it cost the airline to give out free cheap champagne or a free cup of coffee? Like what, 50 cents? It's almost nothing compared to the price of the ticket that the person paid, but it's the exclusivity that gives the value. So the reason that a lot of offices have high no-show rates is because the patient calls in, they say, I'm looking for implants, and they say, okay, we can give you a free consultation. When would you like to come in? They didn't do any discovery. They didn't build any value in the practice. They didn't leverage any emotion for the patient, and they told them it was free.
Yeah.
Instead, we want to find out about this patient's situation so we can give them a custom treatment. We want to sell the practice so that they know we're different from everyone else. And we want to leverage emotion to get them invested. Then you tell them, hey, because your situation is unique, because your situation is special, and I want to help you, I'm going to go ahead and waive the consult fee, right? I would add too, right? Like I like a little bit of like, I'm breaking rules for you. So if you're at the front desk, I would like to say, please don't tell my office manager, but I'm going to waive the consultation for you, right? just give them that little extra, like, I'm going above and beyond. I'm breaking the rules, right? Because we live in a lot of bureaucracy and people are like, I can't break the rules for you, right? No, tell them, don't tell my office manager, but I'm going to waive the consultation fee for you, right? That patient's going to show up because they're like, whoa, this person's going above and beyond for me. Okay, this is Danielle's question. I understand the worth to waive the consultation for the treatment, but if someone's willing to invest 40,000, but they're arguing about 150 on the phone, what is the message about our value too? So the thing is not about values, right? Like, I really don't care if the patient thinks we're, you know, the most valuable in the world or absolutely not valuable at all, so long as they show up and so long as they accept treatment, right? So we don't need this posturing. We don't need the patients to value us at $150. We need them to show up and we need them to go through our process so we can apply our conversion rate on them, which, by the way, every office, you should know your conversion rate from start to end. I booked this many phone calls, this many show up, this many consults, this many close. If you don't have those numbers, you're never going to get better. So make sure you know that. But again, if your case acceptance is 47% on your full arch cases, put as many patients through that 47% as possible, because that will give you more consults, right? I don't care if those patients were willing to spend $150 or not willing to spend $150, put them through your conversion rate.
I
So
guess if I rephrase that question, if they can't, I think the logic is if they can't pay 150, then why do you think they can pay 40,000?
so it's not that they can't pay 150, it's that that $150 is a barrier to entry. And so my question is, if you need more consults, right? Like, if you have space on your calendar in the next 2 weeks, why are we putting barriers of entry on this? I want as many consults as possible, right? The second reason, and this is the less pleasant reason, but a lot of your front desk does not have the skill to sell that $150 on the phone.
Yeah,
And it's a lot
$150 on the
easier
phone,
to
that's
just,
not easy. That's very hard actually to convince someone that you haven't met that pays you 150. I mean, if the patient was referred by another doctor or another patient, that's different. But if they just saw you from an ad, that's a tough task to pull off.
yeah, a lot of your front desks do not have the skill to sell $150 on the phone. And the ROI for investing in that skill is really, really low, because you'll make way more money if they just get good at booking and making sure patients show up. Unless your conversion rate is like 5% on your case acceptance, right? On consults you presented, which, if that is, let me know. We can totally fix that. Your case acceptance should be at like 60 or 70% if everything's working well, right? But unless your case acceptance is astronomically low, your ROI is going to be much higher on training your front desk to book and to show up patients. So don't even worry about the $150 consult fee. Again, unless if you're booked out for like 3 months, there's a few clients that are, right? They tend to be in more niche markets, smaller towns, right? Where they're the only game in town. So if you're in a big city, it's probably not you. But if you're booked out for like a month or two, okay, throw $150 on, right? You're going to keep getting them. You only want to talk to the patients that show up with money. That's fine. But again, if in the next 2 weeks you have time to take more consults for full arch cases, take the cases, run the consults. Don't worry about if they have money or not, because whatever your conversion rate is applies mathematically across all of those cases. So you get more cases by talking to more patients. Once your calendar's full, right? Like, your team is good at this process, go ahead, be my guest, add your $150 fee, ask them about their money, ask them about their credit on the phone. You're going to lose some patients that way. But if your calendar is full, if capacity is your issue, it doesn't cost you any money to lose patients. But if capacity is not your
Maybe
issue,
an analogy of like another business that's not dental related, that doesn't have a barrier of entry and they have like a high ticket, technically upsell at the end.
yeah, well, great example would be the car dealership, right? You're going to spend $30, $40, $50,000 on a new car. Do they charge you $150 for a test drive? No. Do people with zero money show up and try to test drive cars? Yeah, they do. But it costs the dealership more to make that test drive hard than it does to give away free test drives, right? Because again, here's the thing. Nobody wants to spend their time walking in and out of car dealerships. Even fewer people want to spend their time going to dental practices. So if someone does not genuinely want your solution, they're not ever going to call, they're not going to show up, they're not going to try to look for this. So don't put the barrier of entry on it, because that barrier stops some of the good patients. And again, are you trying to optimize for more cases, or are you trying to optimize for calendar efficiency? You should only do calendar efficiency if your calendar is full. Until then, maximize your volume, because that's going to maximize the production that practice creates. Then once your calendar is full, be my guest in restricting them. Does that make sense to everyone?
Perfect.
One, yes. Okay, perfect. Again. Okay, sweet. Fantastic. Thank you everyone for showing up today. I hope you found this valuable. I hope you found this useful, but even more than that, I strongly hope that you take at least something and do it. Even if your team does not start using the entire call checklist tomorrow, if you start using one or two of these things now, it's going to help, right? You spent an hour here today. Get a return on the hour that you've invested. Make a change to something in your practice, whether that's what you're saying on the phone, whether that's how you're managing your time so your team can give your patients more time, whether it's that $150 fee. I don't care what it is, but do something different, because if you don't, this is a wasted time. If you do, then maybe you can get some ROI on that. You're asking for the checklist. Yeah, drop your email and I will email you the checklist. Perfect. I'll send that to you after the call.
Some
All right, we
guys.
got one more.